Oh, show me the way to go home. I'm tired and I want to go to bed. I had a little drink about an hour ago and it's gone right to my head.
Football has always been the sport of the working class, capable of reflecting society both on the pitch and in the stands.
Show me the way to go home. When I'm happy,
But while we can see the best of us reflected in the game, we also witness society's worst impulses, and none more so than the racism which has long been a plague within the game. Black football in Britain began with Arthur Wharton, widely considered to be the first professional black footballer in the world. In 1882, the 19-year-old moved to England from his birthplace of Jamestown in what is now Ghana, and quickly became a full-time athlete in various sports. Signing for Sheffield United in 1894, he played understudy to William Fatty Foulkes, and it was Wharton's appearance against Sunderland that season that saw him become the first black player to play in the top flight. Dying penniless in 1930, a statue in his honour was erected at St George's Park in 2014.
What do you think are the dangers of an increasing coloured population?
Well, there are many immediate evils of the coloured invasion, which are well known to everybody living in this area.
The post-war landscape in Britain saw the rise of racial tensions, marked by the arrival of the Windrush in 1948 and the beginning of mass immigration to Britain from the Caribbean. The former British colony had just been decolonised, and those born there had British citizenship with the right to live and work in Britain. The British government encouraged them to come and help rebuild the country after the devastation of World War II and filled shortages in the labour market. Although the increase in immigration gave birth to a modern, multicultural Britain and would lead to an incredible fusion of food, music and culture in general, it also emboldened the ignorant and intolerant side of British society. Those that struggled to accept the new Britain found their voices in people like the Conservative MP Enoch Powell, who gave a speech in 1968 warning of rivers of blood due to immigration.
This country, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white.
It can be easy to forget, but among those who made the journey from the Caribbean were the future pioneers of English football, including the first black player to play for Wimbledon.
I think it's like most people who came from the Caribbean at that time, growing up in Kingston, Jamaica, in quite a rough area. England was sold to us as the motherland, and when we eventually went there. The streets were paved with gold. We're all going to get jobs. You'll have a great life. We came to England for a better life than what we had in Jamaica.
In the
In the
1972-73
1972-73 season, Wimbledon FC were playing in the Southern League Premier Division. That squad boasted the likes of Ian Cook, Dickie Guy, and an England under-18 schoolboy named Tony White.
It wasn't easy. My first memory was of snow in the early 60s, one of the coldest winters. I can't remember exactly which year, but I remember seeing snow, feeling the pain that it brought, and crying. And to be honest, I didn't want to be there. I'd come from Jamaica. It's sunny, it's lovely, and you can go and play in the streets. And now I'm at a place where you've got this very strange element falling from the sky and freezing. So that is a memory that stayed with me. Moving on from there, I felt it was a normal childhood. We were still poor and life was tough. We've seen documentaries about people not being able to find places to live because of discrimination. Yeah, it was like that. And we went from place to place. We lived in bedsits, cramped. Living conditions were not good. I wasn't consciously aware of the fact that people didn't want us to be there, but obviously that was all around us.
Yeah, my parents, both parents were from Jamaica. They came over here in the early 50s. And then they had me, they had my sister and my two other brothers. And we lived in Vauxhall. I don't remember living in Vauxhall, but yeah, we lived in Vauxhall, near Clapham Junction, Livingston Road. And then from there, my early memories are living in Fulham, where I was brought up. I was quite lucky growing up. I didn't really I only experienced a couple of people shouting derogatory terms at me, but other than that, you know, like or at the time, those were the words they would use. But I hardly ever got taunted or abused. Mainly because again, I grew up with a load of white guys, you know, so they were my mates. You know, there was no colour to say like, oh, he's my white mates. They were just my mates, and they were my mates, and that was it. You know, there wasn't no colour involved at all. But as I said, if anybody did abuse me by you know, name calling, whatever, then my white friends would stick up for me and deal with the matter, and. That's how I got about.
People don't believe me when I say to them, I didn't, out of the friends of mine who I went to school with, who I played football with, you know, we used to play Sunday morning football and stuff like that, or sometimes go to the park and play 15-a-side, white, black, all together. I didn't, put it this way, I wasn't called a black so-and-so when I was growing up. The first time I encountered that was when I started playing professional football. Mm-hmm. You know, it was just, I just couldn't believe it. Mm-hmm. But it was no big deal. You know, I can handle it. Yeah. You know, which you had to handle it.
I was born here, so I'm British, but my parents came from Jamaica with my grandparents. Mum came over when she was 14, my dad came over when he was 11. Then they grew up in South London. Well, my dad grew up in South London, my mum grew up in Derby, then moved to London, and then I was born in 1990. Good happy memories, no such difficulties, just normal family stuff that just happens everywhere. Yeah, no real bad memories, happy memories a lot of the time. They were the first generation to come over. So as a part of the Windrush, they were coming over. So they were asked to come over. And when they did come over, they had to do jobs that they're probably overqualified for, but they'd done them to help the country. So I had the opportunity to do whatever I wanted. But challenges of race, yes, I've been the only black person in the room many a time. When people are pointing out, you're not aware of being the only black person you've had. There've been racist incidents. Being a young black kid, being stopped on the street, stopped and searched by the police, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or sometimes just being black and just being a victim of crimes against myself. So yeah, I've been through it.
So I was born and bred Hammersmith, West London. Both my grandparents came over from Jamaica, so I've literally had all my life here living in West London, coming across to now working in South West London with AFC Wimbledon. Pretty happy childhood. I've had loads of siblings around me to support through my life. Quite a close-knit family. Have like a few bits of family here, and I have a family dotted around in America as well. So yeah, I've had a good journey through, especially through football in my years growing up.
Probably a difficult situation. Probably as a youngster, I probably didn't pay much attention to it, because a lot of the things I did was obviously sport helped me in terms of almost developing a hard exterior to that, and football was a way out for me, obviously, to get out of any situation that I was in, because I played a lot of Saturday morning football, Sunday morning football, and a lot of the mates that I hung about with during the week or after school and stuff like that, I used to play football with. So obviously, like that gets you out of that sort of like political situation as such. So I probably wasn't affected by it as a youngster as much as other people were.
A black man is not given a chance to get a position where he has any sort of power. He's not given a chance in society to play any part at all, in a way he has any authority.
I was an adolescent, and like with most adolescents, I think your emotions are up and down, and it was round about that period in my life that I was really conscious of the colour of my skin and my race. There was lots going on in America. As a young kid growing up in London, we were very aware. I used to go to the Black Panther Party meetings once a week. I went to a grammar school which was almost exclusively white. I never saw any black faces at my school. So I had all these things going around where I just felt like a normal kid, but with that influence and that almost militancy that was coming through from the other side. I remember a few years before at the Olympic Games seeing Tommy Smith and Juan Carlos with the gloved hands raised, and that was like, that's me, that was inspiration to me. But coming to Wimbledon and playing football, that part of it didn't really follow me through. That was kind of another part of my life. It didn't really affect my football. My first favourite footballer was Peter Osgood of Chelsea. We grew up in Battersea. We lived in Balham first, then eventually we settled in Battersea. It's a predominantly Chelsea area. Peter Osgood was a big hero for me. All the Chelsea players were. But I think with Peter Osgood, because he was very young when he came in the team, and I remember he broke his leg, and I was devastated for him. And like all fans, I imagine, I wrote a letter trying to support him when he's in hospital, asking for an autograph. He didn't send his autograph. He wrote me a letter back, signed, and that was it. Peter Osgood for life. But yeah, all the Chelsea players of that generation. Yeah, and generally in football, I admired anyone who I thought had a bit of quality about them.
For me, I mean, like I grew up. I mean, I'm getting on now, believe it or not. But when I was playing football, there was people like Clyde Best, Addy Coker, who came on the scene long before Laurie and Brendan Batson and Cyril Regis and all the others. It was mainly Clyde Best, Addy Coker, Albert Johansson, who played for Leeds United. They were the first black players that I kind of got to know, and they were at the forefront of my mind. Then came, well, at the same time, obviously, there's Pele and Eusebio, who I just idolised. They were just, for me, they were the best players in the world. So much so that when I was about 13 in 1966, and Pele was kicked around in the World Cup up at Goodison Park, he had it was Eusebio had a cut on his brow, and he wore a plaster. So I would go home, get a plaster, stick it on my eye, and start kicking the ball against the wall and pretending I was Eusebio. But yeah, for me it was Pele and Eusebio.
To be honest, believe it or not, my first intentions wasn't to be a footballer. I've probably said this before in interviews that I've had at Wimbledon, in terms of I actually wanted to become like an architect, a draftsman, and that was my first line. Football was a side thing which I happened to be like okay at. And I played obviously a lot of non-league football with the likes of Dulwich, Bromley and Tooting, but I just enjoyed playing football, but I didn't really think that I would want it to be a footballer as such. And probably growing up in the 80s, it was the likes of John Barnes, Cyril Regis, Laurie Cunningham, those types of players that you sort of like saw on TV and stuff like that you sort of like looked up to and wanted to aspire to if you wanted to become a footballer. It was one of these, as I said, where football wasn't my first thought. Becoming a draftsman was. So,
you know, the players that I grew up watching was Clyde Best at West Ham and Rio Coco. He was at West Ham as well. It wasn't inspiration. I was more shocked than anything else. You know, those are the only two black players that I ever saw play, to be fair.
Yes, Tony White. Yeah, I've known Tony when he was playing at West Ham absolutely years ago. There was him. There was also, as I say, Addy Coker played with the same team as Tony. There was Chris White. They called him Huggy Bear. That was his nickname. Yeah, Chris White and Paul Davis. All those guys. I was always looking out for them.
Jamaica's got quite a powerful influence in athletics and sport, so I've been blessed to be quite skilled in speed. So I guess I take that and it transfers onto the pitch for me. But yeah, through my time, I've been interested in loads of sports going through, and I've used that to now like help others basically realise that sport can help them through life.
I didn't come straight to Wimbledon. I was actually playing for a Sunday side who was run by a guy called Pat O'Connell, a former footballer. And there was a school teacher at Spencer Park, a local school, called John Miles, who was a big West Ham fan. And at the time, Wimbledon needed a youth team. They didn't have a youth team. So he brought us, that Sunday side, and we were the youth team. There's been stories, I know, that Wimbledon's youth team started in other generations, but we were the first. Really? We were just a Sunday side that were just thrown together. I think I've still got one of the programmes. We played the FA Youth Cup against Slough Town. I remember I played in that game the night. Wimbledon's youth team was refined later on because we were just like thrown in for one season. But that was the reason I ended up at Wimbledon. We came as that Sunday side, played in the youth team. 3 of us progressed a little. There's another guy called Johnny Maloney, came through and played in the reserves with me. But I think they're all quite good players in their own right. And I was very, very fortunate in that things fell just right for me, that sadly Wimbledon weren't the Wimbledon of the future we were struggling that year. Otherwise, I'll be honest, I would never have got anywhere near the first team. We were struggling mid-table Southern League. We had some good players, but it didn't click. And I think Mike Everett was the player coach at the time, and he took a gamble on me. And yeah, all of a sudden I was there, this little kid, growing up in Battersea, and I was playing for Wimbledon Football Club, and it was great.
I started off at Hillingdon Borough. Hillingdon Borough, the manager at the time was Alan Batsford, the former Wimbledon manager. I'm not sure if he was the manager when they got promoted from the Southern League and went professional. Yeah. He was he? Yeah. All right, I wasn't too sure. Alan Batsford, I played for him. You know how hard he is, and he recommended me to Dario Gradi. Come and have a look at one of my players. I used to play wide left for Hillingdon Borough. Obviously, when the centre forward was injured or whatever, I'd replace him as a centre forward. But I played most of my games on the wide left for Hillingdon Borough. I had my first season, I think I scored on the wing, I think I scored about 15, 16 goals, and I made, God knows how many I made. I lost count. I only count my goals. No assist. They didn't count those days, but now you get credit for assist, which is marvellous. I wonder how many assists I would have got, credit for. And the following season started off not bad, and Alan Batsford said to me, he goes, Wimbledon are looking at you. If you keep on going the way you're going, you probably sign professional before the end of the season, which did happen. I think I'm not sure, halfway through the season, I signed for Wimbledon, and it was absolutely an eye-opener. The players was okay, they were receptive, and I didn't realise at the time I was the only black player that ever played for Wimbledon at a professional level. So I was a little bit nervous. I thought, when I made my debut, I think, it was against Darlington. I was sub Darlington at Plough Lane, and we was 1-0 down. I came on and I got the equaliser. But before the game, the build-up to the game, I thought, God, blimey, I said, these guys, they don't know black people, so they might be a little bit sort of, holding themselves back to approach me. As soon as I hit the grass on the tunnel, there was a rush about 20 young children. Can I have your autograph? Can you have your autograph? And I went, wow, I ain't even perfected my autograph yet. I didn't expect to be signing an autograph. And at that moment, it really gave me a lift, and, as they say, the history, it was all history.
Going up, as I did in Fulham, I'd come over to Wimbledon, over to Plough Lane and watch Wimbledon play. And I always told this story about Steve Parsons. Steve Parsons was a great player for Wimbledon. He played in midfield, and he grew up in Ladbroke Grove, and he hung around with a lot of black guys. So he considered himself more black than he did white. So when I came to Plough Lane to watch them play, it was a Tuesday night game. I remember that, it was very cold, and the ball came out for a throw-in near where I was stood, and Steve Parsons came to get the ball, and as he bent down to pick the ball up, it was right by me, so I just shouted out to him, "Wagwan, Steve," and he turned around and he just looked at me and went, "Irie," and took the throw-in and ran on and continued playing. That was a great moment that I liked.
It was strange because I was a kiddie. I was a baby in the team. Dickie Guy was brilliant to me. Always be grateful for that. Barry Silkman as well, Silky. I'll share it with you, I don't care if he hears this. I remember there was a period where he said to me, he used to call me Chalky, which I know you're not allowed to say anymore, but that's what he did. Chalky and Silky. He said to me, "Chalks, what are we doing here?" He says, "Me and you are the only two players in the team. We'll come to an arrangement. You pass to me, I pass to you, and we'll do it that way. Me and you against them." But no, it was really good. The players, I didn't feel any negativity whilst I was here. There's a little bit because you're rivals with players for the shirt and you're just a kid, but apart from that, no.
Yeah, so I started playing football aged 12. Came across to basically a little bit of competitive football just through playing at school. Something I was really interested in. When I was younger, parents would always be supportive, and family would always be supportive of just getting into sport, really. Started through athletics and running, and then I just showed that interest in football, and it's been supported through there. As I got older, I still took an interest in football and started to give my time back volunteering within my community. Just displaying really that girls can be involved in football and really champion and excel through it. So I started off volunteering with QPR, and which led me to a role there was through coaching and going through my levels, and now building into AFC Wimbledon for the past 4 years. I've been working for the foundation as full-time female development and social inclusion officer.
I wasn't paid, I didn't have a contract, and I remember going into the changing room after one game, getting showered, getting dressed, and looking into my shoes to put my shoes on, and there was a brown envelope in there, and I've taken the brown envelope and I've held it up. What's this? And of course, the whole changing room's descending on me. Shh, 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 shh. One of those. But yeah.
It was fantastic. You know, like there was no name calling, none of that. You know, as you know, everybody else knows, you know, I was the only black player in the squad, and it wasn't no different. It was just, I was just a normal human being playing football for the team. Yeah. And, you know, if someone, when you, at Wimbledon at the time, if you made a mistake, you knew about it, okay? And that was anybody. Make a mistake because you've taken an extra touch when you could have delivered the football, you are getting some proper heat, you know, and that went for everybody. I was no different, you know? And that was it, really, to be fair. The changing room, oh God, the changing room. Before the games, they'll, you know, if someone might just throw a sock at you or something like that, you know, and accidentally on purpose, you know, spill their coffee on your toes or something like that. It was just, you couldn't do nothing but laugh.
The black players had been mustered from 7 different English League clubs. 10 years ago, you'd have been lucky to find half a dozen throughout the country. But today, they feature in such unlikely sides as Hereford United. Albion's Len Cantello was celebrating 10 years with the club and had in his lineup old favourites like Johnny Giles. But as we were to discover, the collective skills of the All Blacks proved too much on the night.
It would be unthinkable now, but in 1979, someone at West Bromwich Albion had the idea to make the Len Cantello benefit match a black players versus white affair. It seems especially strange as Albion had led the way in signing prominent black players to not only play, but star in the first team. However, at the time, the players enjoyed it. Brendan Batson recalled in a later interview that there was no thought for the implications of that match. They were just having a lot of fun being together in the dressing room. But that match outlined what a contradictory relationship supporters seem to have with their black players. Even as fans cheered for their own black players, they would also deal out racist abuse to those playing for the opposing team.
Had given an insight into the deepening reservoir of black talent within the English game.
That's where I got the racism from the opposition. Yeah, some of the abuse and the threats, and it was all geared towards the colour of your skin. I was told that it was banter. It wasn't. I was a kid. It was very upsetting. It was very upsetting. And a couple of the more experienced Wimbledon players, I won't name names, but they basically said, stand up for yourself. Said, if you haven't got it verbally, then you do it physically. And I did.
Yeah, I played for Kingstonians. I started my proper career with Kingstonians and Hampton and Kingsbury Town up near Wembley. But playing for, I remember playing for Kingstonians, I didn't get hardly any verbal abuse from other players, and there was a little bit of banter in the home dressing room, you know, where, you know, but you just took it in your stride. You know, there was nothing meaningful about, you know, it's just something like you call it banter now.
Yeah. Throwing bananas on the pitch, you know, you black bastard, all that kind of stuff, you know, especially Leeds, Millwall. They wanted to. I remember one time when Brentford, I think it was one of the first Sunday games, Brentford v Millwall at the Den. I think George Graham was manager at the time. We beat them 2-0. I got both goals. The first goal I got, right, I've gone to the crowd. What a mistake. Everybody rushed to the front of that. They were shaking the fence, going, "You black bastard, I'm going to kill you." I thought, wow, what did I do? You know, when I got the second goal, right, you know, I didn't dare go to the crowd and do that. I just went to the halfway line, ready for the kickoff. But one of our players, he played for Millwall the season before, Paul Roberts, he was voted Player of the Year. And when I got the second goal, he played fullback, and his side was where the main stand is. And he's gone to the stand, the stand like that. And a supporter came out onto the pitch and punched him. Yeah. And they both got arrested. When the final whistle went, put it this way, it was like a sprint. Everybody sprinted down the tunnel in case the crowd came on. Very, very disturbing. Millwall, always was. Leeds also, very disturbing. Yeah, I was just warming up. When I played for Reading, I was just warming up, and the crowd, I stopped to do some stretches, and the crowd, oh man, I got hammered. And the thought came into me, goes, should I dive in the crowd and throw a couple of digs? And I went, nah, they'll kill me. Right. So that was my way of dealing with it. So I had a little chuckle to myself, you know, and continue with my warm-up.
I did get abuse from a few players that I played against. One in particular I'll never forget. I was playing in a charity match for Ted Drake, the old Arsenal legend, and we were playing at Motspur Park against the TV commentators, yeah, TV commentators. And there was a lot of well-known commentators taking part in that game. And I was on the right wing, and back then they used to call me the Black Flash. I mean, that in itself is a oxymoron, you know, calling me the Black Flash, because I was quick. And I remember their left back was marking me, and every time I would skin him. I'd skip past him and beat him every time. And he would say to me, "Come on, you black bastard. Come on, you black bastard. Fucking go on, fucking get past. Go on, get past me. Go on, you won't get past me." And he did it all through the game. And it just wore me down. And I just thought, you know, the second half we came out, and I thought to myself, you call me that one more time. And, God dear me, it's getting to me, it's coming back to me. And he said it again, and I turned around and hit him. I hit him and got sent off for it. But that was the most extreme thing that ever happened to me on a pitch. And yeah, I kind of regret it, but in a way I didn't, you know, because I just had to show him that it didn't, you know. I just had to say like that, you know, I'm not taking it. That gave me, you know, some impetus to say like, yeah, I'll get past you again, because I did better with him, and he was just trying to put me off my game, you know, and he did do, you know, because we both got sent off, so he did his job, so to speak. But there again, it's a charity match, and there was like loads of people, you know, watching us, so that was that.
It fired me up, but the disappointing factor is, you know, like, I'm a centre forward, I score goals, okay? When you have a chance and you don't take it and you're getting all that abuse from the crowd, that's when it really hurts you, because you know that you've got a chance to shut them up and you didn't take it. You know, that's the only hurtful thing for me, you know, as a black player, not shutting them up by putting the ball in the back of the net, which I've done before. You know, you're getting abuse and all that, bang, you come up with 2 goals. They shut the hell up, you know.
I felt I was a long way away from England's first team. I was a kid at school. I remember when we played Scotland at Ibrox, that was horrible. I was the only black player in the England team, and I know it doesn't sound like a big thing, but 45,000 screaming school kids at Ibrox Park, hating you because you're English, hating you because you're black, hating you because you just headed one past their keeper, hating you because you're being marked by their centre-back who's like the star man over there. Yeah, that was quite a difficult one. And at the time, there was no barriers, no curbs on supporters abusing you because of your race. It was just accepted as normal, which is sad, isn't it? It's really sad. Yeah.
I dealt with it really well, to be fair. Again, with most clubs in that era, they did have black players playing. In actual fact, when we played, Millwall would be a prime example, and John Fashional at the time was playing for Millwall before he transferred to Wimbledon. We used to get a lot of stick playing at the old Den, or if you went and travelled to places like Leeds, or Middlesbrough was a place that we travelled to, and we got racially abused there. Obviously, times have changed now a little bit in terms of it being called out, and obviously the way that life has gone in general.
Dealing with it, it's just an ongoing thing, isn't it? Because it happens to everyone. All my friends, families have gone through it. So how you deal with it, it just became normalised that it was going to happen no matter what. If you're walking down the street late at night, you're more than likely going to get stopped by the police just because you fit a description, and that description was your skin colour. But it didn't happen all the time. But when it did happen, you kind of felt victimised, and the support I had was my friends were going through it. My parents knew what was happening, so they always knew I wasn't doing anything bad. So having that backing from them was always important.
I remember Laurie Cunningham when he was a kid. I played against him when he was at Leyton Orient, and because he was so good, he took abuse like you would not believe. And I think there are a lot of people growing up that if they had a choice as black players whether they're going to play for England or play for the country of their birth, I think a lot would have gone for the country of their birth because it was safer.
A white fella said to his black friend, "Why do you wear white gloves in the cinema?" And the black friend said, "So that I can see my chalk eyes."
Come on, you were beginning to sound just like a female Charlie Williams.
Well, that's where I heard it, on the Comedians.
Racist abuse had become commonplace on some terraces around the country, with no real anti-discrimination laws to enforce. Society at the time had grown used to a diet of mainstream entertainment that included overtly racial content and the little kind of backlash you would expect today. But seeds of change began to be planted when one particular form of racial abuse seemed to shock the nation's consciousness. In a Merseyside derby at Goodison in 1988, Liverpool player John Barnes backheeled a banana off the pitch. It had been thrown there as a form of racial abuse. It was nothing new. Sadly, bananas have been thrown at black players since the early 70s. But this was a high-profile match, and the target was one of the best players in the world. With the press coverage it received following the game, that incident and the iconic photo that was published forced society to re-evaluate its attitudes.
It was very, very difficult. You felt threatened. I felt threatened all the time. The John Barnes incident that got a lot of publicity. I love the way he dealt with it. But yeah, you're growing up, you're a teenager, then you're a young adult, you're going through your adolescence. I grew up as a Chelsea fan, and I stopped going to Chelsea. It was nasty. It was the club that I grew up supporting, but it was horrible. And it was so open. There was no protection. There was a nasty, in the 70s and 80s, football in relation to black people, especially black people going to watch games, was horrible and nasty. And I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe.
It's one of these ones where it's the minority that affect the majority, and obviously it's a minority of supporters that do things like that. It's one of these, as probably as back players and John Barnes would tell you, or anyone else, we tend to sort of like, it's not right, but you rise above it. You rise above it and you let your football do the talking, and basically what you try to do is beat the team that you're playing against. So again, there obviously there is that effect on you as an individual, but obviously as black players, again, we have to be mentally stronger than the average player to cope with incidents like that help us to move on and move forward. But we do the talking by the football that we play.
When I played for Brentford against Portsmouth, and I didn't even notice, it was said that they threw bananas on the pitch. I said, when? I didn't notice it, because I was engrossed in the game. I'm not, that wasn't my bag to look at racial abuse. I was getting it from one of the centre halves anyway. You black this, you black that. I went, yeah, okay. Why don't you get a tape recorder and just play the tape recorder instead of repeating yourself all the time? Things like that, I'd say.
I stopped going to Stamford Bridge. And I suspect that people gravitated away from Chelsea to Wimbledon. That might have been one of the reasons. It was always a nice place to come, Wimbledon, and you felt safe.
Of course, we'd like to think that this doesn't happen anymore, but the truth is sadly different. Even as this film was being made, there were more bananas being thrown, each reminder that there is still so much need for change.
Very difficult to take. Is it creeping back in? No. Has it always been here? Yes. It's just now in a different guise. So now there's social media, so you can hide behind it. Before there wasn't social media, so you probably were in a pub and it might have been said and nothing was done, but now it's people on social media that are able to just make fake accounts and just start abusing people just for the colour of their skin, even though they would want that person to do well for their team. So I find it quite interesting when there is racial moments and people actually support the team, but when it's national, they're not a part of our nation anymore, but they're representing you. But then you go back to club football, it's mental really. And the society, football's just a vehicle of society, so it's a societal problem, and it needs to be ironed out from there.
History is written by the conqueror, not by those that are conquered. History is written by the people who do the harm, not by the people who get harmed. And we need to go back and teach both sides of history. And until we do that and educate the entire human race, this thing will not stop. They keep on telling me there's nothing called white privilege. Give me a break. I don't see any white people going into a store on Oxford Street and being followed. A black man walks in, somebody's following him everywhere he goes. That is basic white privilege. Whether that white person went in to rob the place or not is not going to be thought of that way. And things like that have to change.
Well, what Michael Holding said was like absolutely. When I heard the whole interview when he said what he said, and it was just powerful. It was just so powerful that it got you. It really, it resonated with me. And what do you do? What can you do? You can hand out so many fines. You can ban people, but like if the punishment doesn't fit the perpetrator, they'll keep on doing it. They'll keep on doing it. And so you've got to hit these people. Well, you've got to hit them hard with a fine or with a ban or do something, because it's got to stop. It's just got to stop. Because at the end of the day, we're all the same.
I put it this way. I forget what game it was where all the English players was getting slaughtered. But then when you go to the European Championship and you've got the 3 black players missing penalties and then getting abused on Twitter, this, that and the other. There should be access to know who's sending that message. And I think there is. I think they can get to those people via, the information that they get on, and nothing gets done about it. You lock them up. That's threatening behaviour.
I don't see it fading out, because when you go to Eastern European countries, I won't name them, they know who they are, their FA hits them with a really silly fine, which is meaningless. I could pay the fine and not notice a difference. So if a football club in Eastern European country can pay a fine like that, then without blinking an eye, what's the punishment in that?
But what they're getting fined what, 20 quid? That's ridiculous. But having said that, that sends a message to black players, black people, that black people, black players, they don't count. If you abuse a black person, you get you go to bed without dinner, or you get you won't get your pocket money. A tenner. Ridiculous.
It's either banning them and their fans, and then if it persists, hit him with a really heavy fine, something eye-watering, that they think, Jesus, we've got to do something about it. And then if it persists, ban them and get their FAs to get them blocked from playing in certain competitions, i.e. the World Cup or even the Champions League, if they get there. But it has to stop.
Yeah, I could understand where he's coming from in that point, but you've got to look at your home first. England's not racist. You can't go and preach to other countries about what it should look like when we as a country are still doing it, even though we're meant to be multicultural. So if you look at London, very multicultural, but then you look at everywhere else in the UK, it's predominantly white. So we have to look at our home first before we can go and talk to Bulgarians and other countries like that. What should they do? Well, I think it's about exposure. It's about education. We probably hear it all the time. Some people just aren't aware of what racial things are, like the unconscious bias and institutional racism and all those things that people aren't aware of and what it actually looks like. So they're unconsciously not being racist, but there is racial tones and undertones to everything they're saying. But it's mainly exposure and just education and people wanting to learn and stop being ignorant to the problem that it actually is.
I think it'll still take a long time. I know things have improved and football clubs have signed and try to see what they can do to really push a fair game for everyone. But I think within that, there's a couple of things that need to be done more of. I know that a lot of players didn't always agree with the bending the knee, and that more should be done. I know that there's some clubs that are buying into like the Muslim Charter, as they've done here, but I think it just needs a bit more done in terms of sustainability. So it'd be great to push that through education, as I've tried to do over the last couple of years on Black History Month specifically, but definitely need some sustainability going forward on. Let's not focus on 1 month, let's focus on 12 months of the year, and where we can really push actual Black history and the future as well for players.
But racial abuse, it's disgusting, but the way I look at things, the only reason why they're doing it is because they're cowards. They've got a crowd of people there and they're cowards. They think they can't get detected.
I think making people aware of what's going on is a start, and then allowing people from different races, creeds, colours an opportunity to go and see those opportunities is where it needs to go next.
As of last season, there were no black owners and only 2 boardroom members across the Premier League and the PFA. There is a common perception held of black players that they have strength and pace but lack intelligence when compared to their non-black counterparts. Has this bias led to black players and coaches coming up against barriers to fill the top jobs?
For me, being at Wimbledon, not at the time, because obviously I did get that opportunity to do the reserves. and I think we was in a difficult situation in terms of being in the Premier League at the time, and I think we got relegated. So obviously for me, it probably wasn't the right time. But I think in general, there's probably not enough black managers in the various leagues that there are. Even probably given the opportunity to be a manager, that's something that probably needs to be addressed.
You've got to kind of take into account where we are on the journey. So in the 80s, black people were still being vilified for playing, or earlier than that even. Then you had those black players not wanting to be managers because of those experiences. Then you've got the 90s guys who are now starting to come through. So you kind of think about it, the noughties guys that haven't probably finished, they're close to retiring but not finished retired yet. So then you've got the 10s and the 20s. So you're kind of thinking like football is behind, but it's dependent on when people retire. So ex-players coming into the game now, you're probably thinking there'll be more players coming through, ex-players coming through. There are more opportunities now for coaching at the coalface, but that's not enough, because it's not just coaching and playing football. There are other jobs in football that black people don't do. I'm currently on my master's in sporting directorship at the moment. So even looking above that, from playing football, from being a coach, that in the boardroom, there's not enough.
I'd say that, as we know, within the game, at the elite level or at the top, there aren't many black, brown men or females that are in the game at the top. So if you look at managers in the game, there aren't that many compared. So I think that's something that definitely needs to change. And I know there's quite a lot of things that are going around in terms of bursaries and getting coaches at the next level. But I definitely think it's the support and the opportunity. You can have as many coaches and 120,000 new coaches coming in to the game, but it's whether you're actually still going to get that opportunity to use your skills that you know you can. So I think that's something that definitely would need to be changed.
Again, we understand the criteria, and a lot of minority managers have got involved in like A licenses and doing that, and then the pro license, and a lot of people have got it. But then in the same breath, you've got a lot of people that won't do it because they know that they may not be given that opportunity of being a manager. So that needs to change, and that can only be changed from the powers that be above us.
The Rooney law is not working. I know a lot of black coaches, fully qualified, A licence, UEFA A, but they're probably in the background. There is quite a few in the background, but I don't know how many. I couldn't give a figure of how many is in the background, but there is a lot in the background. But what I'd like to see and read in the paper, that there's a job up for grabs and there's 5 candidates and 3 of them are black. That's what I'd like to see. But will it happen? I ain't going to hold my breath.
I came back after West Ham. I had a choice of going to Slough Town or coming back to Wimbledon. There was a little striker called Biddy Holmes, who I played against. I think he was at Luton Town. And Alan Batsford, who didn't really know me, he took me for a few days to see how I would fit in with Billy and if we were going to be a new strike partner. It was more his coaching staff that knew me. And sadly, it never worked out for us, and I ended up playing for Slough Town. Coming back to Wimbledon after that, all that time, I suppose the love affair started when I played. Wimbledon has never really left me. I've gone and done other things. I openly admit I grew up as a Chelsea fan. I played for West Ham, but I know it's a bit of a cliche, but there's always one team. You look for their results and you follow the careers of the players. I was always interested to see how far Dickie was going to go, if he was going to stay here. People like Billy Edwards, who I remember because he was a tooting lad, and I I followed them because I was interested. I wanted to see where their careers were going to take them. And like the cup run, that was fantastic, beating Leeds United. And that was, I felt like a fan. The opportunity came full circle through David Barnard, who I think a lot of Wimbledon people know. There was an opening at the club. It was going to be in the year that the Premier League started, and started as a part-time thing, and 13 years later, I was until that horrible Milton Keynes thing.
I've done a interview before, and I said Wimbledon, not only me, all the other players that went on to better things and all that sort of stuff. Wimbledon make you a football player. You might go in there raw, but you leave that football club, and the things that you've learnt there, you take it on board, and it will work wherever you go. It's like you building your son, making your son to be a man that he is. That is what Wimbledon was like, and I'm sure everybody that played for Wimbledon ain't got a bad word to say against them. The methods that they used and stuff like that, which is all good for me. I've not got no criticism about the training, anything like that at all. Tactics, we were looked after. Yeah, 100% looked after. Supporters was great. What more can I say about that? Great football club for me. And people might say, all right, I went on to Brentford and done well at Brentford, but it really hurt me to leave Wimbledon because it was my home. I got on with all the players and all that sort of stuff. Well, we all got on together. All right, there was a few little spats here and there, but nothing major. It was fantastic. Even when I came back there and played, well, I was on loan from Brentford. I don't know how long it was. Was it 6 months I had at Wimbledon? Anyway, when I went back there, it was like I never left. It was fantastic. Vinnie Jones, John Fashanu, Sanchez. Well, I know Sanchez from, when he used to play for Reading, And was there any more? Nigel Winterburn, never played with him, But when I came back, it was like, I never left.
It was a welcoming club, a very good club to be at. Had some good experiences there, brilliant fans and supporters, and a great staff around it. So I enjoyed my time at the club.
I mean, I remember travelling around the countryside with AFC Wimbledon when we first started out. Places like Ash, Sandhurst, Cove, and Farnborough, and I'd look around and I wouldn't even think of myself as like being the only black person there. But now coming to Plough Lane, you look around now, you see families coming with their kids, and their little kids are now walking around proudly in their AFC tops, AFC Wimbledon shirts, saying like, oh, I want to be like this person, I want to be like that player. And it's fantastic, and it surprises me sometimes because like you see like in Indian families, and like you don't see Indian families going to games anymore. Well, you do now, but I didn't see that when I was growing up. All I saw was like white guys and and the odd female every now and again. And like as I said now, even females are getting involved and they're appreciated. So it's moved a long way.
At Wimbledon Foundation, we're quite lucky enough. We have a wide base of coaches that have all different backgrounds and influences that can help like young kids coming through to, no matter what it is, whether it's improving on their technical skills or just being able to have that social side and feel safe within the environment of what we're putting on for them. So we've been quite lucky with also having a community pitch here on site at the stadium, a little five-a-side, and having not only boys football but a lot of girls football being able to be provided there. So I think going forward we want to keep our links with Merton and Wandsworth and throughout the community of Wimbledon, being able to give some sessions that they can really get involved with and enjoy.
The whole premise of the Dons Cup is to make it a bit more what it's like on the street, bringing back that playing with, no matter who you're playing with, you're there to have fun, You're there to compete. Football players come in all different shapes and sizes, so it's better to do it from young and in a safe environment that is AFC Wimbledon. And then we added that competition element of where it is to be a Don. So every player represented a player from the first team, ideally an academy player. But when those players are sold on, you need to find new players. So that's the change. And now we're just going to do it bigger and better. And hopefully, I say, fingers crossed, that we get to play at Plough Lane for the final finale.
We've had plenty of successful stories. We've seen some young kids from the community get picked up and come into the programme or development programmes we've got here. One or two making it into the academy side. It's been great to see how we've had some new programmes such as Premier League Kicks, which allows young kids to come in from all different backgrounds to have some free football and be able to just meet with others that maybe they wouldn't get the opportunity to. We've also been really heavily pushing our Active Dons programme, which is again another free, half-funded programme which provides free multi-sports and food for kids during our half terms, which I know Marcus Ratchford touched on previously. So it's been for that, and in that time as well, we've run one Community Club of the Year, so something really proud to be involved in the community here, being able to affect all from different areas.
Especially when you're around the crowd and you see the different people from different races, different religions all coming to the ground, it's something that we're trying to look at in the academy as well. We're based in New Malden, so it's the biggest population of Koreans in London. But we haven't got a Korean in the building. So it's an area that we've kind of looked at and seen what we can do for the community as well. So yeah, it's definitely a family film. We feel we need to add to that as well.
I look around and and watch on television certain things, and you see people like black people and brown people on telly now doing certain things, and you think like, wow, I remember like to go on television, you had to have an equity card. You couldn't go anywhere near a television screen or television camera or television studio without an equity card. You don't need it anymore. If somebody likes you, they can just say, oh, I like that person for what they are or what they can give. And we'll give them a job, or we'll have them doing interviews, or we'll have them doing this. So, the future looks bright.
I'd love to see it, but probably my children's children, maybe. But hopefully it happens. There are moments, and you can kind of see things open up, but there's always another ceiling. There's always another ceiling at this moment in time.
I want to be in the limelight to help others. Like I said, as a role model, it's you got to see it to be it. So if I can, show that I've got through from my level where I've started, and in years and years, with my years of experience now, I've got to, this level at a football club. I want others to see that, and hopefully they want to take that pathway as well.
Brilliant. I don't think any of them are probably aware fully of the extent of when you then hit the first team, what it would be like as a minority player. So it's something that probably they may need to look at as a club in terms of the players dealing with social media if they make the first team. I know they do something for the under-18s in terms of that with the PFA, but it's probably something that needs to maybe be addressed for the club as a whole when a first team player, or should I say an academy player, makes it to the first team, and then everything that goes with that regarding social media.
I think things have improved. I think the racism still exists, but it's in a different form. It's not so overt because there are laws to stop this, but it exists. Listen, people are people, racists are racists. You're never going to eliminate it totally. I hope that footballers will set a good example, and that people will follow them, and that eventually it will be eliminated, because it's it's silly. It's silly. I say it's silly, and maybe that doesn't emphasize enough the severity, the seriousness of it. But I find it very, it's difficult to explain because it's quite an emotional thing. There's a phrase that come into my head which stays with me, and it's the reason why we have to continue to fight. I think it was Bob Marley quoted someone else, until the colour of a man's skin is of no more significance than the colour of his eyes, then we have to continue this. And that stays with me, and I think that's very, very important. But optimistically, I think it's better. I think there's more black players playing. I think people identify whether you're a white kid, a black kid, an Asian kid, watching football, supporting football, you're not looking at the colour of the skin, you're looking at the player. And I tell you, it makes me smile when I see a white kid walking down the road with the name of a black player on the back of his shirt. Seeing like Chelsea fans having Rudiger on the back of their shirt. I think that's tops, because it means that we've stopped looking at the colour, but we're looking at the shirt.